Welcome to the Old Ways for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wanjerabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Old Ways for the New Age podcast. My name is Hannah. I am your host and I thought I would jump on today and surprise you all with a final episode for 2025. Wow, what a year. I haven't actually managed to get a solo episode on at all this season, and I thought it wouldn't be right to see the year out without actually having a heart-to-heart with everybody and jumping on for one solo episode. So here we are. Today's episode is all about the nuance of the new year. And this is really speaking to the fact that in witchcraft, in paganism, and in the world in general, there are so many different markers of what a new year means. Like, when does it start? How does that work for you as an individual, in your community, in your religion, in your spiritual faith? And when should we really be celebrating the new year? And in what ways? First, actually, I'm going to jump in and talk about my year and the podcast year and give you a few details about what my year was like. But I'm also then going to speak to a few of the points in the year that you could choose to view as your new year, or multiple of them. And then some ways that we could look at manifesting and intention setting and, using divination tools to divine what is coming for us over the next 12 months or whatever period you choose. So we're going to be talking about that at the end. So stay tuned for that. Hang in there with me. But I just did want to start with saying, wow, thank you so much. I had so much amazing feedback this year from people. And I think maybe I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I inherited this podcast, right? And so, I'm so glad that I have it, but it's one of those things, it's kind of like small business where you don't really get to interact with people in person or one-on-one. I don't really get to have a conversation with my listeners, and that can be tough. So I absolutely love it if you leave a comment on Substack, or it is easier for me to see on Substack and for us to have a conversation. But I love any DMs I get on Instagram, or emails, or comments on Substack, comments on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and just people giving me positive feedback, because it really does help me to see that people enjoy what I'm doing and that it's worthwhile and valued. So really, I thank you, because I don't have co-workers to give me a boost. And I work really hard to get episodes out because I am a mum. I do a lot of solo mumming, and my life is very full. I don't like the word busy, but I have a lot going on at all times. And I also make things hard for myself. Like, I cook most of my food from scratch, and I have a non-toxic home, and I do a lot myself. So finding the time, just know that it really is a dedication to you all for listening, and my passion for education and sharing knowledge and amplifying people's voices, who are people that I really respect in the kind of herbal wellness and spiritual space. Amplifying their voices, getting to share their stories. It's that passion that is the reason why I keep doing this. And 2026, one of my biggest goals, maybe I'll talk more about some of my goals at the end, but one of my biggest goals for 2026 is to really take this to the next level. I would love to build more of a community on here. I would love to make more episodes for you guys. I would love to just reach more minds, reach more hearts, and spread, I guess, the wisdom, knowledge, and education that we have to share here on this platform. So if you have any expertise in this, also please let me know, because I'm finding it hard to find resources to help me with growth, and I really am a novice. But all of that said, I wanted to go through my year, the year of my life, and then also of the podcast life. So I'm going to go through month by month and share kind of the highlights or the big things that happened. So in January, I really just enjoyed the summer with my family. So my little guy was still quite a little guy. He, just turned 1. And I spent a lot of time at my parents' place, which is, about an hour and a half from here. And we did Christmas together, and that was really fun. But then continued on the party through January. It was so hot though. I remember it being so hot, but really fun. And it was important time for my little guy to spend with my family, with my parents, with my brother. Actually, my brother wasn't back at that point, so with my parents. He was still in England. That's a long story. And I made quite a few medicines through the first few months of the year, including in January, my first, I think I strained it. Did I strain it off in January? No, I infused it in January. My first ever fresh St. John's wort oil. And if you didn't know, you have to really kind of, for the most part, you have to make it with the fresh flowers. And so I grew my own flowers, and I kept adding them to the jar throughout the season, and got this beautiful red oil. St. John's wort is so beautiful for the nerves in the body, and it's anti-inflammatory, and it really is, herbalists know it as sunshine in a bottle. So it can really lift the spirits as well. Honestly, go Google St. John's wort. The only thing, if you're going to work with St. John's wort, is that it is not suitable for most people on medications. So just really understand that. But otherwise, it is fantastic. And so any sort of nerve damage, it can be beautiful. Neuralgias, sunburn. It's one of those remedies you really want to have on hand for when you need it. And so I made my own with the flowers that I grew myself. And that was a really, really beautiful experience. And it was important and meaningful to me, because I do believe that in our qualification, we miss a lot. And the parts that we miss are these kind of irreplaceable experiences that you would have traditionally with a mentor in a mentorship situation, an apprenticeship situation. You miss these hands-on first-person experiences where you get to really touch the plants and understand what the plant likes when it's growing, and how to work best with their medicine to get a potent oil, and learning the methods, like what methods are best for processing the plant and straining it off, and how can we apply it in creative ways too. How can we work with our medicines to make the most of our herbal medicine cabinet? So that was really meaningful to me. In February, we decided we were going to sell our house, our first home. So we had 2 homes, and we were renting out our first place. I would have loved to move that house onto new land and have it as a secondary place, but ultimately financially, it just, with the interest rates the way that they were climbing, it didn't make financial sense for us. So we ended up having to let that home go, and I made sure that it was a priority to me and a priority to the agents that it needed to go to the right people. I didn't want this home. It was over 100 years old. I loved my little cottage, if you didn't know. It was gorgeous. I loved living in it. It was just a little bit small, and for our growing family, it just wasn't the right fit. But I do miss it every day. A young couple bought it, and I just didn't want anyone who was going to develop it. So it was important to me that the integrity of the home was respected, and the energy of the home was respected. So we did end up selling to a young couple. And so we spent February pretty much just getting that in order. And that was a really big month, because that was back where my parents lived. So it was an hour and a half away. We had a baby. We were back and forth constantly throughout that month, which is also why we had a lot of family time through the first 3 months of the year. And we released our first episode of season 4. I think we're in season 4 of this season. And that was Sensory Herbalism with Megan Rhodes. And that was a great episode. That is one of our most listened to episodes. Megan is incredible. She's funny. She's relatable. I love listening to the way that she teaches. And I wish I could go to her school, which is a yurt in like the pastures of England. So I would love to actually, Northern England, I think. I would love to visit one day. So Megan, if you are listening, I might hit you up when we travel in the future just to see it. But Megan is a great teacher. And so getting to listen to her talk about sensory herbalism was wonderful. And a great start to this season. In March, there was a cyclone where I live, and if you were here last season, you'll know that we had a tornado. And so then less than, I think it was like less than 18 months later, we had a cyclone. And we also escaped this one. We went to my parents' place again. And the cleanup was pretty immense, and we still have damage to our property that we haven't repaired yet. The insurance took ages to kind of sort all of that out, and it was just kind of devastating for our small mountain community here. And so that was a major bummer, to say the least. And then in March, I also attended the Grailhaven annual astrology conference. So there's an astrology gathering at Grailhaven, which is the not-for-profit that I was a secretary for up until this coming year, where I'm stepping down. But yeah, that's on every year in about February, although this year was a little bit later, but typically it's in February, and we'll be in the February coming. So if anybody is local to the Tamborine Mountain area or Southeast Queensland and you want to come along, just let me know, and I'd love to get you the information. I will be there. I'm very excited. We have always 5 astrology teachers there who do presentations on, astrological topics. And there's always the Chinese astrological New Year that happens. Richard Giles does that one and talks about what to expect from the Chinese astrology perspective for the following year. So that's predictive. And then I think last year we talked about Venus with Michaela Rachel of Star Witch Astrology, and got to see her speak in person, which was amazing. That's where I actually got to finally meet her in person, and that was great. So all in all, we had a great time. It was a wonderful weekend, and we talked about Neptune and Chiron, and yeah, I highly recommend it if you'd like to come along. It's very accessible too, because there was the reason why we had it late was there was a big astrology conference that restarted, and they had theirs in February, and theirs was thousands of dollars for a weekend. And the Grailhaven one is $200 for the weekend. So it's a little bit, and that's rounding up, and it's a not-for-profit. So it's definitely a great way to dip your toe in if you would like to learn from some teachers in person and get to experience the astrological community here in Queensland. That'd be great. So then in April, we released episode 2, which was a conversation with Holly Moffat of Ignaria Wellness. And I love Holly. She's just so fun, and we are so aligned in a lot of our beliefs. And so getting to talk to her about herbalism for kids, and then also how to celebrate the seasons in a family home from a more pagan perspective was wonderful. And I got really into sourdough in April and I made the most incredible sourdough hot cross buns that they were pentagram buns, and they took me like 3 days to make, but they were so good that now I have to make them again this year. So that's unfortunate for me because it was a really big process, but it was worth it, and everybody raved about them. And then we released episode 3 in April, which was with Jen Campus, and this was to date one of my favorite conversations I've ever had with anyone. I love Jen. I fully intend, again, Jen, if you're listening, totally going to come visit you when I make it over to Europe. And so we talked about unpacking folklore, ancestral connection. We talked about nature-based spirituality and families, and just so many other things. We talked about home spirits and so many different topics, and we talked about neurodivergence in spirituality, and that it was the only episode, and still is the only episode I've ever cried in. So if you want to listen to Jen and I's conversation, then check back to episode 3. Then in May, I was very into sourdough still. And then we released episode 4, which was a conversation with Harmony O'Loughlin. O'Loughlin. Now I'm panicking about how to pronounce her last name. But Harmony, who runs the Botanical Anthology magazine and the Plant Wonder Collective, and we talked about botanical education as well as plant spirit experiences and a whole host of other things. So that was a really fun conversation. I've worked with her for years now, and so it was wonderful to get to bring a bit of her story and her mission to the podcast and to my listeners. And then I also spent time redesigning a rebrand for my business making tonic drinks, which has not yet launched, but it has renamed to Tonic Apotheca. And I have released some of the rebrand for that, so you can kind of check the vibe. It's on Instagram. I just haven't been posting, but I really, really want to get back to it this year. It's just finding the time and space. I can't do everything all the time, right? So when I feel like I can dedicate the time to making sure that I do it well, that'll come back. But it has filled my heart to get all the messages from people saying how much they miss the tonics and how they've not found any others like mine, which again really keeps that fire lit within me. So I really appreciate all of those messages. And then I harvested a lot of chickweed in May and made a chickweed oil, which was great. And the first time I've done that was a fresh plant oil as well. But chickweed you have to work with a little bit differently because it is a juicier plant. So that was cool too. In June, I did a pottery class by myself and went along and made a crystal mug, and I really enjoyed that. I went by myself because there was no one else who could make it and I didn't want to wait. And I had a little bit of a crisis in June, and I had been solo mumming for a while. My husband had lots of work commitments on and trips away and lots of sporting events, and I was cactus. I had a little bit of a snap. And so I just went, I am booking a pottery class and I'm going by myself and it's happening. And I did it and I really enjoyed it. And I love how my mug turned out. And then, sorry if you're watching this on YouTube, the sun is coming across. It's kind of blinding. If you didn't know, you can watch the video of our conversations on YouTube or Substack. Don't know if I want you to watch them, but they are there if you're a visual person. And so I did that. We went and visited friends at the Sunshine Coast and attended the Sunny Coast Herb Fest, which is run by Kat, who I did interview last season. So you can go and listen to that if you're curious. But that was really fun, and I got to meet some online friends in person for the first time, which was beautiful, and yeah, had a really nice time overall. And then we released episode 5 with Natasha Skian on cultivating a wholesome motherhood, and I love Natasha so much. I'm really sad. She actually used to live near me and we didn't really hang out. We didn't really know each other like we do now then. But that episode is one of our most listened to as well. And Natasha has just a beautiful creative mind and I love her words. She's constantly reflecting and learning and growing. And so her Instagram, she shares little tidbits often and I just really enjoy her content on there. So you can go have a listen to that conversation if that's interesting to you. But you can also go and check out her Instagram. And then we released episode 6 with Michaela Rachel or Rachel Gooder of Star Witch Astrology. And so again, I met Rachel for the first time in person. We live on the same small mountain and had never crossed paths, which is kind of interesting because she's one of the witchier people on the mountain here. And just somehow everyone else had run into it and I never had. So I made a point of introducing myself at the astrology weekend, and then we lined up a time to have a chat and we talked about eclectic witchcraft, about ancestral lineage, honoring our ancestral lineage, and practical everyday magic, as well as earth spirits and other topics. So that was a really interesting and really enjoyable and informative conversation. And Rachel, like Jen, so Jen Campus is an anthropologist. and Rachel is currently studying anthropology. So it seems to go quite hand in hand with paganism, which I think it makes a lot of sense because we're, so connected to our lineage, to our ancestors. So that makes a lot of sense. And I have a conversation coming up with Rachel again. So that one's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about Venus. So stay tuned for that one in the new year. In July, I had a cozy month. I say cozy month, but really, actually, it was very full on. I say cozy month because I didn't do a lot of things for myself and I didn't actually release. I think it's the only month I didn't release a podcast episode. And so that was intense because we were prepping for our trip back to Canada and the United States. So that was massive, prepping that we were basically going away for 2 months because we were doing Canada and the States and then coming home for 2 weeks and doing Tasmania for 2 weeks. So it was really intense having to prep for all of that and get all my ducks in a row with a toddler and a husband. And so that was intense while working because I work with my friend Brooke, who owns Renew Vintage, if you didn't know. And we're basically in a startup phase. So there's a lot of growth in the business at the moment. There's a lot going on. And so, yeah, it was wild. It was actually wild. And it was cold. So that's why I said cozy. But, I enjoyed the wintry vibes, but just basically spent the whole time panic prepping. And then in August... Oh, and then in July, I also did release my famous rosemary chocolate cookie recipe with the botanical anthology. So that was really fun. And that is my revamped, reformulated recipe. And if you haven't tried my rosemary chocolate cookies, you can get it in, which one was it? I'm not sure, but you can get it in one of the botanical anthology magazines. If you are curious, reach out to me and I'll find out which one it was. But then in August, we released episode 7 of the podcast with Kaya Skraskova, and that was on herbal skincare. And I love Kaya. I love everybody who I speak to, but Kaya I met in person I met her first at the Sunny Coast Herb Fest the previous year. And then we kept in touch online, and then I met her a second time at this year's. And then we were like, you know what, we should do a podcast. So we did, and it was great. And I love that Kaya is like a no BS kind of activist, passionate, person who blends science and energetics and folk herbalism. And she's an expert herbal skincare formulator. If you didn't know, that's like her thing. And she teaches people how to formulate herbal skincare and to make herbal skincare that's amazing and really good for you and good for your skin. So, as she also almost exclusively works with local plants. So she doesn't import her ingredients, which is really important. So we actually touch on what bioregional means in that episode too, which is interesting. But that was a great episode. And then I was working on my presentation for the Great Lakes Herb Fair, which I'll talk more on in a second. And we flew to Canada. So we started out in BC, jumped across to Vancouver Island, and went to a wedding, which was the main reason why we're going on this trip. And it was beautiful. It was in Tofino on the water. It was gorgeous. They were so happy. It was a great day. It went really well. And then we went to stay with a friend not too far away, still on the island. And we were with him for a week. I think it was a week, a little bit over. And I had lined up, it worked out really well, that I was able to do a workshop at Raven Song Herbals, which is run by two amazing women. And I'd met Harmony. So Jessie is the owner, and then Harmony is kind of her right-hand woman. And I met them both, but mostly Harmony, at the Vancouver Island Herb Gathering the previous year. And so, yeah, a women-run herb farm. It was badass. It was beautiful, like such a lovely space. And so I did 2 days of workshop on herbal basics, and also like crafting, handcrafting herbal medicines, and learnt how to make the most amazing salve ever without the Cammy McBride method, so no alcohol intermediary, just folk method, sort of, but with heat. But really, the secret is your herbs. Like, really, like, that was it. Jessie's biggest piece of advice was, you got to grow it. got to grow it and you got to use it fresh. And honestly, in like 2 hours, we made the most insane salve I've ever seen, even. Like, not even just used or made, but that I've ever actually laid eyes on. And so I will try to do a little roundup post on Instagram with some of the photos from the things that I'm talking about, so you can have a little nosy through that. But I'll put a picture of that stuff up because it was amazing. And then we went to Coopville, which is the filming location for Practical Magic. And so that was, honestly, to get across the border, it was insane. It took us over 3 hours stuck in a car with a baby at nap time, which of course didn't happen in nap because we were stuck in a line. And yeah, 3 hours to get across the border, which was just absolutely wild. It's in the United States. But we were getting so close. We were so close last year and I didn't realize. And then when I realized how close we had been, I said, there's no way we're going back and not visiting Coopville. So we visited. It was such a cute town. And I would totally go back. I'd want to stay there, I think, for a couple of nights. But I got to see props from the movie, like real, actual, like the bottles from Sally's Apothecary. I got to see the view that the aunts and Sally walk past on their way back from the post office in the beginning of the movie. Unfortunately, it was under construction, so I didn't get a great photo, but I actually went in the store that was Sally's Apothecary, Verbena Botanicals, and got to sit and eat in there. Now it's a Mexican restaurant, which is really random, but it was beautiful and the views are great. And there's a walking tour pamphlet you can get from the information center, and it takes you to, like, it shows you all the locations that they filmed in and what scenes they filmed. So it was awesome. And I bought a special edition hardcover copy of Practical Magic from the bookstore there, which was, I think, my favorite shop. It's just so cute and they have amazing books. So highly recommend. Also, while in Canada, I got to see banana slugs for the first time, which was awesome. If you're a slug nerd like me, I also picked up multiple pieces of pottery. And the art there on Vancouver Island and the surrounds is just awesome. So I picked up prints and other stuff as well while we were there. I love Vancouver Island. I think if I was to ever move to a place in Canada, that would be the place that I went to for sure. So in September, we went up to Ontario and we were in Ontario for that period of time. And we got to see my in-laws, and then we went across the border before we came home, and we attended the Great Lakes Herb Fair, which was honestly such a beautiful experience, and it was such a highlight of my year for me, not only because I spoke at it, so it was my first time speaking at an in-person conference, and like honestly so incredibly honored. My friend Jim McDonald pulled some strings, I swear, pulled some strings for me. I don't know this for sure, but I think he had something to do with the reason why I was accepted, because I know they get a lot of teacher applications every year. But I was speaking in amongst some of my favorite herbalists of all time, Rosalie De La Foret. I met Seven Song, met Mason Hutchison from Herb Rally podcast, and just fangirled basically the whole time. Met Rebecca Bayer, and I actually received her book for Christmas. I'm so excited. And just like, honestly, it was like Woodford Folk Festival crossed with a herb conference and like a naturopathic conference, and it was so educational. Like there were 1.5 hour long sessions. So I spoke on integrative flower essence therapy and just was super honored to be there. Did some shopping, got some cool stuff, and just really it was such a family friendly affair too. So Finn had a great time running around, and aside from the fact that it was bloody freezing and we were not prepared for it, it was awesome. So I'm really honored, and I'm so sad I won't get to go back again this year. Then we actually came back to Australia for 2 weeks, went down to Tasmania for my husband to play in a national hockey tournament. He's playing for Queensland, and that was cool. I said, there's no way you're going to Tasmania without me. And so I made a point to go and visit somebody named Emily, who runs a place called Magical Farm, which is a convivial permaculture farm in Tasmania outside of Hobart, and had an amazing time. And we're having Emily on the podcast in the new year as well. Love everything that she's doing with Magical Farm and her passion for life systems and just overall well-being, I guess, of communities, of the land. So I really look forward to bringing what she has to share to the table with you guys. I also got to meet an online friend, Natasha, who has an incredible Instagram called Of Birth and Mother. And just Natasha's so funny, and we are totally on the same wavelength with the things that we enjoy, being extra in the kitchen and logo loves and practical magic and just, pretty things. So it was really so special that I got to meet her. It was a bit of a last minute plan. I got to meet her partner and her one of her kids, and it was just really wonderful. Of course, we watched a few hockey games while we were there as well. And then in October, we were still in Tasmania. So we got to actually meet some Tasmanian devils, which was cool, at a place called the Unzoo, which is a kind of zoo where the people are contained and the animals run wild, and it is a conservation effort. So that was really cool. And they have this thing called the bubble where you get to stick your head up and you're covered with a plastic dome, and then the Tassie devils just sniff around your head if they want to, which is pretty cool. So we did that. I'm not really one for zoos, but that one was really interesting. And we then came home, and I immediately started prepping for the Canadian Herb Conference. And that was really tight. They were a little behind this year. It was a tight turnaround, but I did manage to make it work, and so that was great. And there were some amazing speakers. The Seed Sisters spoke at this year's Canadian Herb Conference. If you don't know who the Seed Sisters are, you need to immediately go and look up their work. Absolutely love them. And I spoke on, it was all about the mind and all about cognition. So I spoke about flower essences for harmonizing the mind, and then exploring mucuna pruriens as a neurotransmitter precursor. That second one was really big for me, and it was a lot of heavy research, and but it was really interesting to learn about. I already had been working with mucuna prior to, and this was just, when you're speaking at a conference like this, you need to make sure you have resources, and everything is cited. And so, yeah, it was great, but it was a lot of work in a very short space of time, coming off the back of 2 months of travel. Then in October, my little guy Finn turned 2, which was so special. It was also a hustle to get everything birthday related ready and plan his party with my family. We didn't do a big party this time because last year it nearly killed me. But we just did something small with my family, and that was really nice, and did the birthday table and made a birthday crown and all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I love birthdays. I love being able to do this kind of tradition with him, because if you know anything about my birthday, I'm the 26th of December, so I've just had my birthday, and I've had a history of really bad birthdays and really just unpleasant birthday experiences. So it's really, I think, you know what, I actually think it's healing for me to be able to really honor his birthday and celebrate him. So that's been really fun. And so we did that in October. And then also we did a community photo shoot with my work. So with Brooke's business, we organized and pulled off a community photo shoot where we had real women from our community come and wear the clothes. And it was our first lot of professional photos done by anyone other than Brooke. So that was a really big deal. I did a grazing board. There was a lot of coordination, and it was a great day, and it went really well. And that's just something else I can add to my resume now. And hopefully we'll do more of them in the future, because it was fun. And I think the women really enjoyed it too, which was special. And my mum came along too. We got photos together. That was really nice. And then we released episode 8 of the podcast with Megan Rhodes from Heritage School of Herbal Medicine. And we did a 3-part series. So we released part 1 in November, and it was an 8-season framework that combined the Wheel of the Year and the Ayurvedic dosas for a seasonal herbal approach. And so we talked about the Wheel of the Year, the Ayurvedic doshas, the basics of that, and then went through every single Savat or season on the Wheel of the Year and talked about recommendations and herbs you could work with and ways to incorporate those two frameworks into the one for a really nuanced herbal practice. So that was really cool. We did episode 1. I got sick in November, and then I also got sick in December. I'm just going to spoiler alert at that for you, which is very uncommon for me, but I feel like that's because I was just so run down. The second half of the year really kicked my butt, and I still feel really run down. And my baby really has trouble sleeping, so I don't get a lot of sleep. So I'm doing all of these things, and these are really just the big things, like not even the little things. And kind of there were other things like car-related issues. I had my first car accident in 2025 earlier in the year, and that was kind of a fraud thing, and that sucked. And just there was so much. Like, I really feel like 2025 was really hard, and I'm looking forward to a fresh start with a 1 year in 2026, and let's hope that that really comes through for us. But I got sick for the first time, and I set up my Christmas tree because I went, you know what, 1st of November, here we go. I need some joy. I need some pleasure. And I'm going to milk every ounce that I can from the Christmas season and the solstice season. So the Christmas tree went up on the 1st of November, and I have no regrets. And so we did that. And then we also went on a Christmas steam train ride as a family with my parents, which was fun. Then in December, we released episode 9 and 10, which is part 2 and 3 of my conversation with Megan. And so we've just recently finished that. Did lots of Christmas crafting, did some solstice festivities. We went to Herb Cottage, which, if you don't know, I worked at Herb Cottage for a small while, but it's an organic herb farm not too far from me. And I love Sandra and Mick and everything that they're doing there and have been doing for a very long time. And they're just awesome. You can order online. So if you're in Australia and you want to grow some herbs, maybe some uncommon medicinal herbs, then go on, check them out online, and they are just really beautiful, really heart-led people. So, you know, when you just find someone who's really genuine, they're just really genuine people, and they care for their staff so incredibly well. Sandra cooks for their staff regularly. She makes cakes for everybody from scratch. She runs pizza nights, and she invited me to their Christmas party, which was so fun, the previous year. And then I restarted my garden because I was sick of waiting, and everything died, sadly. So many of my beautiful things died while we were away. There was just no rain, and my brother was house sitting, and that just wasn't going to work. So that was really sad. So I've restarted my garden. I'm in the process of building it out now, and then had Christmas and my birthday. And that pretty much leads us up to now. So, yeah, it was a big year, guys. If you'd like to share a little bit about your years, feel free to send me a message. Again, I love to hear from everyone. But let's jump into the types of New Year. So there are different markers throughout the year, different kind of hallmark times where people consider it to be a new beginning. And we're obviously about to come up to the Gregorian calendar New Year. So that kind of the basic calendar New Year that most of us are familiar with, that most of the world works by. And so I was just I re-listened to a podcast episode from my gals over at Back on the Broomstick. So if you haven't listened to Back on the Broomstick, I absolutely adore their podcast. Layla and Shell, they're so fun. I want to be your best friend. I re-listened to their one from last year, and they were talking about, and actually one from the end of this year too. And they were referring to the fact that even though there's a lot of parts of it that don't make sense and how it came about, but the reality is that so many people in the world believe in the calendar New Year that actually gives it power. So, you know, it is still a time that is a liminal space and that can be worked with magically, and you could use to set your intentions if that makes sense for you. And I do want to preface with all of this by saying that you could have multiple New Years for different purposes. So for me, I think that I more resonate with my birthday as a personal New Year, and then kind of the wheel of the year, like the Sabbath's, the witch's New Year, as the beginning of a year. So that to me makes sense, but I'm going to continue talking. So I'll get back to where I was. So the collective social belief that the calendar New Year is a new beginning in a liminal space makes it so. And so you could totally choose the calendar New Year as one of your New Years, or as your only New Year, to set your intentions, to do your workings, to divine for the next year ahead. Like, that's totally cool. But then you could look at your birthday as a personal New Year. So that's your personal astrological New Year. It is the returning of your sun, and Yeah, it's a great time. So I just had my birthday. It's a wonderful time. My mentor Jerry Taylor Wood always says you should live out your birthday the way you want to live out the rest of your year. And that's been a really big focus for me for the past 2 years. And I've been managing to turn this birthday, I used to call it my birthday curse, around, because I made sure that everyone in my life knew that it was really important to me that the way that I spent my birthday reflected how I wanted to spend my year ahead, because I was sick of having these downer birthdays and then a downer year. So I really am hoping that I had a wonderful birthday this year, that helps me in my year ahead. And I'm still kind of setting my intentions and doing my card pulls and such for my following year, because my birthday was just a couple of days ago. So I kind of take this time between my birthday and the new year as like that sacred space, that liminal space for me as my new year. So it just happens to be that it's kind of like aligned with the calendar year, but that's not, I don't think that obviously isn't the case for everyone. So that's an option though for your astrological new year. Then we can look at, obviously, with different cultures, there are different New Years. One that everybody is familiar with is the Chinese New Year, which happens after the calendar New Year. So that's just something to be aware of, because every culture is going to have their own beliefs around that. And then you've got the Witches' New Year. So this one is kind of interesting because there really are two schools of thought. A lot of people believe that Samhain is the Witches' New Year, so autumn. This is interesting because I don't know if I agree with it, but I do get that it sounds fun and it seems right. But really, honestly, whatever you believe, whatever resonates with yourself, your life, your beliefs, then that is what you should work with. The thoughts behind Samhain being the Witch's New Year is that it's the final harvest, the veil is thin, and there's a lot of symbolism around death and rebirth at this time of year. And it's definitely a time of self-reflection and taking stock, which goes along with the final harvest, because that's when people were taking stock of what was going to sustain them, what their gardens had grew, what their crops had yielded, what their animals were doing, what they got from their livestock, and how that was going to actually carry them through. How secure were they in their basic needs for the winter? And so this is, a big time for reflection and reprioritizing, and all of those rewords, kind of like a Mercury retrograde, but on a bigger scale. And then you got Yule. And this is kind of my belief around the Witch's New Year. I resonate with this one. But Yule is when the goddess descends into the underworld. She's heavily pregnant and she's ready to give birth to the god, the sun god. So it's deep winter, and the Holy King is giving way to the Oak King once more. And if you know about that story, there's the dance of the Holy King and the Oak King, representing the light half and the dark halves of the year. And so the sun god, the Oak King, is about to be reborn. And so there is that really quiet, still time. Also a time of reflection, also a time of renewal, really significantly a time of rebirth. And so for me, that makes sense as a New Year point for the Wheel of the Year. But again, whatever works for you. But I just wanted to highlight that, when we talk about New Year, there's really no one set time that we have to, use or work with to set our intentions, work with our manifestations, do our card pulls, do our divination. Just because you miss one doesn't mean you don't have other opportunities. And really, you can pick any singular moment in time. But obviously, these kind of points in the year carry maybe a little bit more weight, just energetically, because they are liminal times, liminal spaces, and I guess magically charged, if you will. So some ideas for manifestation, intention setting, and divination. So ways we can celebrate a new year, whenever that may be for you. So obviously, I think some of your major ones, like doing a vision board, which I personally love doing, but I have found over the years that I really need to make them either seasonally, like the 4 major seasons, or more frequently, because I used to do it that old school way of doing just a year. But the reality is we shift and change and achieve things or don't throughout the year. And so by the time we get to the end of the year, we've missed opportunities for sending our focus and our energy to places that need attention or we want to send attention to, because where attention goes, energy flows. And so say you've achieved something on your vision board in January, and you just said it, you made the vision board in December or the 1st of January, and by February you've already achieved maybe say a few things on that list. Why wait the rest of the year with things that, you've got space on your vision board, right? You've achieved some stuff already. Like, let's think about what else we could call in. How else could we harness that energy? So refreshing them regularly, I think, is best, and doing smaller, more acute vision boards. So maybe each Sabbath, I might try this year to do one every 8 seasons. For every one of the 8 seasons, then I'm thinking of trying that. But definitely spring, summer, autumn, winter would be great. Quarterly. And then you've got your tarot spreads. So the one that I really liked that the ladies on the broomstick were talking about, and that I've seen online as well, is the Wheel of the Year spread. So it's 13 cards. You pull the 12 cards in a circle, either starting at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. And then you have a 13th card, which you can place in the middle, and that is your culmination card. So that one I really like. And the culmination card is the thing that you really just need to, like, I call it my overarching theme or my overarching card. So like the thing that kind of ties it all together, that is of highest importance, that you focus on ultimately throughout the year. So I really like that one. It's interesting that it's called the Wheel of the Year spread when it's 13 cards, because like it's kind of acting like a 12-month like yearly spread, even though there's only 8 cards on the Wheel of the Year. 8 spokes on the Wheel of the Year. So you could also choose to do 9 cards instead of 13 and look at it as like 1 card for each Sabbath, each season. But yeah, that's one that I am thinking of trying for sure. I like that idea. You could get your astrology chart done. Either you do it yourself or have somebody else do your progress chart, work with a bit of predictive astrology. That could be really nice. Or if you've never had your natal chart done, you could get that done for the first time. That would be cool. There is a ritual called the 13 Wishes Ritual, which is similar to the Wheel of the Year spread, but you write down 13 wishes on little pieces of paper. And I think the traditional one is over 13 days, 12 days. But Layla from Back on the Broomstick was saying that she's devised one which is 12 hours. She was saying start at 1 p.m. and finish at 1 a.m. And then you burn a wish each hour. So they're rolled up like little scrolls. You burn one randomly each hour. You could also do it in minutes if that really resonates with you and you feel like you believe that that works for you. Then burn each of the wishes periodically. And then the 13th one is the one you open up, and that is your wish to take care of for the year. So that is your responsibility. So Layla was saying that the idea is that you send it up to the gods, you send it up to deity, to spirit, to handle the other 12 wishes. But the 13th wish is your responsibility to work on throughout the year consciously. So be careful what you write down because you don't know which one you're going to get. And then also you could do journaling. You could do a ritual bath, either for purification, but really, so a lot of people do a purification bath. However, that's to kind of slough off the negative energy or anything that's stuck to you throughout the year. I like that idea, but you could literally do anything. You could do it for love. You could do it for abundance, like financial abundance, prosperity. You could do it for fertility. You could do it for anything. Whatever your big focus is for the coming year, you could work that into a ritual bath. And you could do wish candles or burning intentions. You could burn them on bay leaves. You could burn them with candles. You could then along that line with intention setting, you could also come up with a word of the year, which I've been doing for probably about a decade. My 3 for this year are peace, community, and expansion. They're the themes for this year, and every other year I've only had one, but to set a word for the year that, as Layla says too, they touched on it as well in Back on the Broomstick, but again, I've been doing this for well over a decade, I reckon. It's your touchstone for the year. So it's kind of like that theme, that mantra that you keep in your head. It's your goal that you keep in the back of your mind through every decision you make, every commitment you make throughout the year. I'm wanting to cultivate peace, community, and expansion. So they are my words, but you can come up with your own for the year. You can also come up with some affirmations for the year if that's helpful for you. You could do a money bowl. This is another one I want to do this year. So money bowl, or kind of set up an abundance altar. So a money bowl has its roots in Chinese feng shui tradition, but you can basically, you create a bowl, you find a bowl, and in a ritual setting, you set it up, you add rice is traditional, coins or notes, so actual physical, like real money, crystals, spices and herbs, and candles, and you put it in a place where you walk by it often. I think it's common by the front door, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me. And then you refresh it throughout the year. So you feed the money bowl. So you add a coin every now and again. I saw somebody online say that they do it every time they go shopping. They add a shiny coin to help encourage the money to come back to them. And then you can either, once you've got what you're after, if it's a specific money bowl and you've got a specific goal in mind, like reaching a certain amount of money or purchasing something in particular, and then that's accomplished for you, you can gently and thoughtfully dispose of the pieces, separate it all out, release the pieces, or you can keep it as an ever evolving money bowl that you constantly add to, refresh, add to it again, and it becomes its own living thing. So that is something that you could consider, or again, do it in an abundance altar format. Something I like to do for the new year, whatever new year you're choosing, is to do a really deep clean. I love this at Beltane and Samhain in particular, because the veil is thin and it's the time of the Fae, and there's just a lot going on. So I and it's a reprioritization, kind of taking stock period of time. So I really enjoy doing a deep clean at those points, but you could do it at the new year too. And I like to do the simmer pots, or adding and then using that leftover water as your cleaning solution, or adding it to your cleaning solution, and doing like a sacred wash for doors, windows, liminal spaces like that, and floors. Or you can just add herbs, oils, things like that to your cleaning solution. In general, you don't have to do the simmer pot first. That's just a nice sustainable way of doing it, and clean with it. And also just declutter and really care for the energy of your home, because I've got a conversation. I've had another secret what is this, a hint, what is it, a spoiler alert. I have already had a conversation with Jen Campus again, and that is going to be one of our first, if not our first episode for the new year, talking about her new book, but also about house spirits and the energy of a home. So definitely respecting the energy of our home is really important, particularly for the new year, I think. And then you could do a cinnamon blow. So this is I guess this took off on the internet, probably on TikTok, I believe. But basically the concept is that you get a little bit of cinnamon in your hand and you blow it into your open front door. It has to be the front door. And you say an intention when you do this. So one of the ones that I came up with was, where this cinnamon blows, abundance and prosperity flows. And so definitely, again, always through the front door. You leave it for a while and then you can eventually clean it up. But that is the idea, that it's bringing abundance and prosperity through the front door like a magnet. And cinnamon, as we know and talked about on the podcast before, is fantastic for abundance, prosperity, cleansing, protection, really just about anything. So make sure that your intention is clear when you are working with that plant, and do it mindfully. But I love that as a simple, quick little ritual if you wanted to try it. And you can also do a doorway ritual. And this works particularly well if you're working with a time. So, for example, midnight on the calendar new year, or on the witch's new year. Just before midnight, open your back door and let all of the old energy out. You could sweep with a broom and sweep all of the old energy out the back door. And then as it ticks over to the new year, open the front door and allow all the fresh energy to come into the home. So that is a really common one as well. You could spread, strew some herbs that are known for abundance, like basil, cinnamon. You could work with this in many different ways. I will probably do that as well. I really like that one. That's easy. I think it's like a really simple ritual to try. It doesn't harm you to try it. So why not give it a go? And then what else? One last honorable mention that I wanted to make was I did find online a ritual for an Irish moss money jar. And this is, again, an abundance related thing, which is really common, a common focus for the new year. We want to bring in abundance, money, financial success, prosperity in whatever that means for you, job opportunities, whatever that is. But we want to bring that in for the new year. We want to encourage that for the year ahead. And so this one involved whiskey and some Irish moss and some coins, maybe some crystals and spices into a jar. And the one that I read that had the best resource on it was on a blog post from House of Intuition LA. So you could Google that if you wanted to. So that one sounds really interesting too. But overall, I think that's all of my suggestions that I've kind of run through there for you. I hope that some of them are helpful. I hope that you were interested in hearing about the year's recap and that you had a good year. I know a lot of us didn't, but I really hope that you did. And if you didn't, I'm really hoping that 2026 is bringing this 1 year. So if you didn't know, it's a numerological 1 year. So we've just experienced a 9 year, and we're looking at a 1 year coming up. So I really like 2026 to bring that magician card, 1 year magical energy. And I'm just going to hope for the best and also set my clear intentions and try to really, I'm doing a big review of my life, have been for the last 12 months. And really this year of the snake, I've really resonated with, and a lot has fallen away this year. Some things that even were a little bit hard to see fall away, I've allowed to do that because actually none of them did until I set the intention that I wanted that to happen. And then it happened, maybe just a little bit quicker than it has in previous years with certain things. So I really had to be brave this year and understand that I can't do it all. And that was my big lesson, I think, was understanding that you can't have everything and expect everything to be of high quality in your life. So I can't stretch myself so thin and expect my life to be really peaceful and feel abundant when my cup is so empty, if you know what I'm saying. So I think for me, that was my biggest lesson. And also just taking a slice of humble pie and being okay with it, because I'm a first daughter Capricorn and I find it hard to say no, and I find it hard to let other people take over for me, and I find it hard when opportunities get taken away from me. And maybe I haven't even had an opportunity yet, but I see somebody else get it, and it was something that was simmering in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do in the future, but it just hasn't been the right time for me. And I really have to sit with that feeling and go, you know what? If it's meant for me, it will be. And I just have to be okay with that. I can't control everything all the time. And so that has been 2025 for me. And 2026, I'm moving in with a decluttered space. I'm working on that at the moment, and just a freedom of spirit, just taking the pressure off myself a little bit and allowing more time for creativity and cup filling, holding better boundaries. And again, what I want for 2026 is peace in my life and community to support me, and that I can support back, but just a reciprocal relationship with my community, which I haven't really ever had. And so I am looking for that in my life. And then expansion. I want to expand my business practices, and I want to expand my life in ways that matter and that are building my life up in positive ways. So yeah, with that little share done, I really appreciate your support this year, and I am definitely going to be doing more solo episodes in 2026. So you'll have to let me know. I know there's been some common requests, but if you have new ideas on what you'd like to see me talk about or listen to me talk about, then let me know. Because again, your feedback is so important to me and appreciated and valued. And also if you've ever wondered how you can support the podcast, the absolute best thing you can do is to share it. Share it, rate it, review it, comment on it, like, just get it out to other people so that others can see what I'm putting out into the world and can join us here, join our community. So yeah, if you are looking for something to listen to or to engage with over the next couple of days as we pass through this liminal space that is the calendar new year, then you could go and listen to any of those podcast episodes that you've missed from 2025. And then also I recently put out a new newsletter on Substack, so you could check that out as well. And yeah, let's head into the new year with gusto, with compassion for ourselves, and not setting resolutions because that is so resolute that it leaves room for failure. So my motto has always been ritual over routine, and I think ritual over resolutions as well is perfectly fitting. Let's bring more, prioritizing boundaries, but in ways that allow space for movement, flow, and flexibility in our lives. So again, thank you, and I'll talk to you in 2026.